Hi there, thanks very much for watching my videos. 96 subscribers now. I wanted to have that song in the background. Ain't no stopping us now. We're on the move, okay? Still not up to the dizzying heights of some of the apostate videographers, but from little acorns, big oaks grow. This is about as big as this oak's ever going to grow, I'm afraid now. I've reached the old age of 40. This little video is my thoughts on something which I haven't really talked about before. It's about something that I noticed as I left the Jehovah's Witnesses. Really affected me, and maybe it affects you too, from whatever cult you've left, from whatever organization. It doesn't just need to be a religious cult, by the way. It can be political cults too. They're very, very big on this, okay? And it's something called confirmation bias, okay? Sounds like a big phrase, but it's not really. It's very simple. It's just the ability in the human brain to filter out the stuff you don't want to hear, and to attract and absorb the stuff you do want to hear. We as Jehovah's Witnesses were great at it because we were raised, I was raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses from year dot. So, I was raised on end of the world, disease, famine, hunger, AIDS, rape, murder. I was raised on it. I was convinced the end of the world was coming, and I was convinced the world was a terrible place. And so when I became sort of a free-thinking person and started reading up and discovering that the Jehovah's Witnesses had been liars, I was horrified, of course, but I was also pleased to now then being able to leave, even though that caused a lot of trauma in my life. What I then noticed, or at least I didn't notice, is that the ideas and the way of thinking that had been implanted in me from childhood through the Jehovah's Witnesses, not my family, but through the Jehovah's Witness religion, that continued because I had never dealt with that. And it's very difficult to deal with that. And what I mean by that is I still had the attitude that the end of the world was coming. I still had that. I left the Jehovah's Witnesses and stopped spiritually prepping for the end, but I very much associated with the idea of prepping for disaster. And I noticed that took up a lot of my time, and I think that I used that to fill up the gaps of time that had been freed up, as I left the Jehovah's Witnesses. So that just filled in the time for me. And the reason that I did these things was not necessarily because they were true, because they're not, okay? The reason I did them, well, they might be, but they're probably not. But the reason I did them is because the workings of my mind, and possibly yours if you're a doomsayer Jehovah's Witness, a former one, is that you've got that wiring which says everything out there is bad, the end must come soon, it's a wicked world, and you just aren't able to see good things. This can lead, in very many cases, does lead, even whether in or out of the Jehovah's Witnesses or any cult, to really serious psychiatric depression. Very, very serious issues with depression. Certainly among Jehovah's Witnesses, it's affected me, it's affected family members that I know and love, it's affected friends. The suicide rate amongst Jehovah's Witnesses is very, very high. Former as well, sadly, because of the terrible abuses that are put upon them through shunning, through the non-acceptance of their life, should they be gay or lesbian. Should they be a person who doesn't believe it anymore, like myself. They're called filthy apostates, mentally diseased. We're called dogs returning to our own vomit, on and on and on. The insults never stop. And so is it any wonder then that you end up suffering because of it? But it gets even worse. But because your brain is wired to only look for the bad things, well, when you're depressed, what do you look for? You look for the bad things. You don't then go out and say, oh, look at the sunny day, look at the flowers, let's go for a walk. No, you sit there and you fester and feed on the negative, because that's what your life was about, feeding on the negative, okay? And especially now that you're out of Jehovah's Witnesses or out of your chosen cult, it's much easier for you to feed on those negative emotions and keep you down. The same thing can be said, those same cult-like qualities that I've talked about are present in many political organizations, in many far left and far right organizations. And when you leave those, you can be guilt-struck and really damaged by this confirmation bias, whereby you'll constantly look for the negative. You can even do it with what I would call a social disease, which is racism. If you're constantly looking for negative things about black or about white people, you'll find them all day long. It doesn't make your bias true. It just makes you guilty of having this bias in the first place. Okay? So what I'm saying is it's very difficult to get beyond it, but if you're a Jehovah's Witness, if you're a person who's left the Jehovah's Witness, and I'm really pleased to see there's so many leaving, and that's great. You get a big thumbs up from me. Excuse me. I've recently friended a couple, lovely couple, who left America and they're now over in Holland, and that's great. And they're out fairly recently. But I would say that's brilliant, guys. But I would caution anybody who's not out, a long time. I mean, I'm out of the witnesses. I sent in my disassociation letter, which I found, by the way, the other day, and I'll read it to you. Then as soon as I can get it on the computer, but I found it on a hard drive. I sent that in 2004, so now we're talking 11 years later since I officially left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and here we are. And I still have issues because of it. So I don't know when you ever get over it. I don't feel I have, but what I would say is that I would caution those who have only just left or who are only out 1 or 2 years. You've got to be careful, because you're out there thinking, oh, it's all good, but until you deal with the workings of your mind, the way it's being controlled and the way you think about things, you can often find that you automatically just go back into the groove, and a lot of your attitudes and your behaviours will be exactly the same. You'll just be like a Jehovah's Witness but on the outside, and that's no way for anyone to live. So as I say, it's my video. If anyone has a comment on it, you're more than welcome to comment. I do enjoy all the other people's videos. There's so many to choose from. Pardon me. But as I say, and I'm sure a lot of them would agree that this stuff haunts you. It really does, because it's how your brain has been made, and it really bothers me certainly a lot, even today. So if you have any comments to make, I'd love to hear about it down there. And if you have any negative comments, feel free to do that too. And I really enjoy the conversations. I enjoy the videos, and I'm up to nearly 5,000 views, which is it's pretty awesome when you think about it. I don't think so many people ever listened to me when I was going around the doors, but then I was rubbish at it, really bad. I remember my first ever attempt at the doors. I held the magazines out. I was on my own. They left me on my own, about 10 years old. And it was a Friday night, and I held the magazines out. And I said, "Do you want to buy these magazines?" And the guy said no. And I went, "Okay, thank you." I put them away. I should have gone, "You want to buy these magazines?" But no, it's terrible. And that was my introduction to being a Jehovah's Witness publisher. But thank God that those days are behind me. Eh? Okay, anyway, have a lovely day. I've had a nice day today. It's been nice over here in sunny Ireland. And I hope you guys do too. Okay, bye-bye.